Has the fat-free, low-fat diet, has that reduced heart disease? No. And what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. And with this fat-free, low-fat diet, they introduced something to take the place of butter. It was margarine. Margarine is a toxic fat. In fact, it's only one molecular structure short of plastic. And when margarine goes into the body says, alien from out of space has just entered. Get rid of it as quickly as possible, but on the way it's starting to damage the arterial walls even more because it's a damaged fat. The damaged fats are contributing to heart disease. We need to take fat into our body the way God made it. In the nuts, the seeds, the coconuts, the avocados. And the two plant oils that have been extracted for centuries, extracted from the flesh of the plant, so women could even do it in their kitchens. And this is the coconut and the olive oil. These have been eaten for centuries and didn't cause heart disease way back then. Something else has risen since this diet's been around, and that is mental illness, Alzheimer's and dementia. What else has been implemented to try and reduce heart disease? Number 2, get as many people as possible over the age of 50 onto cholesterol-lowering medication. In fact, they're often called statin drugs. So we'll just call them the statins, it's easier to write. There's a Crestor and Lipitor. They're two common cholesterol-lowering medications. I have a book at home. It's by an astronaut, and also he's a medical doctor. And his name is Dr. Dwayne Graveline. And the title of his book is Lipitor, Thief of Memory. So he went for his yearly blood test, and the doctor said, oh, your cholesterol level's a little bit high. What is it? 220. I want to put you on cholesterol-lowering medication. It's a little bit high. We don't want you to drop dead from a heart attack. So he took the statin drug through fear. Is that right? There's no other reason. He doesn't want to die. 6 weeks later, his wife found him out in the garden. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know where he was. The wife thought the only thing that has changed is that medication, so they stopped it immediately. Within a few days, he certainly had improved. A year later, he went back for his, well, it was 10 months later now, went back for his yearly blood test. Cholesterol levels were 220. His doctor said, still a bit high. I don't like it that high. We want to get you down. I want to put you back on Lipitor. And Dr. Dwayne said, I'm not going to go back on that. I nearly went mad on that. Doctor said, that's very rare. We'll put you on half dose. Okay, why did he go on half dose? Fear. 6 weeks later, his wife found him out in the garden, didn't know who she was, didn't know where he was, didn't know who he was, stopped it immediately. And so he wrote it up on social media. And the social media people said, wow, can we put this out there? He said, be my guest. Within hours, thousands of hit. The same thing happened to me. How do the statin drugs work? They block the pathway in the liver that the liver uses to make cholesterol. But that same pathway that it uses to make cholesterol, it uses to make coenzyme Q10. What's coenzyme Q10? It's your heart protective enzyme. So you can go on statin drugs thinking that you're going to reduce your risk of heart disease, and you can actually increase it because you've now lost coenzyme Q10. Here are the side effects of the statin drugs: muscle wasting, memory loss, Alzheimer's, dementia, and they've just added another one. It's breast cancer. Because if you don't have enough cholesterol, you can't make your sex hormones correctly. The ability of your body to make them is compromised. I remember one of my favourite authors, she said, drugs never cure disease. They just change the form and location of, and can't you see it in this? I was in New Zealand. I was in Invercargill. And I gave a meeting on Tuesday night on heart. I went there 2 days later, giving lectures on another subject, and a couple came up to me. They were in their 80s. The lady was little and very quiet, and the man said, I need to tell you something. He said, my wife's been on Lipitor for 10 years. We were planning to put her in an aged care facility because she's leaving the iron on, she's starting to wander. It's really hard to keep our eye on her. He said, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and she's gone and she's walking down the street. He said, we feared for her safety, so we were making steps to put her in an aged care facility. He said, we came to your lecture, we heard about Lipitor, we stopped it immediately. And he had tears in his eyes. He said, I've got my wife back. In only, 48 hours, the wife was recovering. You can stop the statin drugs immediately, but there will be a side effect. Your memory will return. There is no other side effect when you stop it. There's actually only improvement, that's all. So putting people over the age of 50 on statin drugs, has that reduced heart disease? Not at all. It is still the number one killer. Number 3. The third step that's been taken is to lower the levels. What do I mean by that? God, in his wisdom and mercy, allowed me to come in contact with a nutritionist about 5 years ago. She was at one of the retreats in Alabama. She said, I'm 69. I was trained in university as a nutritionist 40 years ago. She said, I still work. I work with a doctor half the week and I have my own practice the other half of the week. She said, 40 years ago, we were taught that 300 was a normal cholesterol level. 300. Perfectly normal. And yet what are we told today? Remember what this guy was told when he was 220? This is dangerous. It is not dangerous. Do you remember the 2 systems I showed you last night? One's based on lies and deception, the other one's based on truth. The truth is based on the fact that God created our body with an inbuilt ability to heal itself, and it will heal itself when you give it the right conditions. Eliminating fat, lowering fat, has not stopped heart disease. There is one fat that if you stop, it will help, and that's the altered fats. That's the dangerous fats. You know them because they're all in clear plastic bottles. They're all your vegetable oils. They're all dangerous. When I went shopping with Richard, I think it was yesterday, to buy me some food, I found some very nice organic olive oil from Italy in a glass dark bottle. Yes, olive oil does have one little empty spot on its molecular structure, so it is sensitive to light and heat, but not as sensitive as the others that have 3 empty spots on their molecular structure. So when you buy it in dark bottles. And I put it in my lentils just before I serve them. The Framingham Heart Study I like this study. It wasn't funded by the pharmaceutical companies or the meat industry or the dairy industry or the cereal industry. It's an independent study, and they set it up about 40 years ago, about 35,000 people in this little town. Some die, more come on. And they set it up to prove that cholesterol causes heart disease. Well, it's 40 years later now and it still hasn't proved that. But what it has proved is that people with high cholesterol levels don't get Alzheimer's. Do you need a moment's silence for that? People with high cholesterol levels don't get Alzheimer's because the brain is the fattiest organ in the body. And in the brain cell, the brain is made up of these nerve cells. And we're going to look at the nerve cells in detail on Friday night and on Saturday morning. So this fatty substance that's around the arm that comes out of the nerve cell, that's what takes the membrane around the nerve cell up to 70%. And that fatty substance there is a cholesterol type substance, a lipid. And that plays a very important role in protecting the nerve cell from damage from mercury or heavy metals or chemicals. It also insulates the nerve cell. It conducts the messages through the nerve cell. And that's why the nerve cell is 70% fat. So what can we do to prevent heart disease? Now that I have shown you what officially has been done to reduce heart disease, and now that I've shown you that none of it has worked because it's still the number one killer, let's look at these basic laws. We looked at them yesterday. And because these are the true remedies, I always apply them to every illness.